Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video, my second of today. I figured this might happen because they have been dropping these pretty lengthy Wednesday Lightfall blog posts that are not the TWAB, but usually these days have more interesting info than the TWAB, but I guess I owe you two videos anyway because I didn't do one yesterday. I'm going to go through, I've already read this, so it's not like a fresh read, but I'm going to go through and talk about the weapon tuning preview, which is not the full balance pass changes, but it is kind of generalized nerfs and buffs to like some archetypes, like the DPS meta, and some of the exotics. So I'm not going to read like literally everything, but I will get to the highlights here. One thing they're going to be able to, so you can on PC now you can have red reticle. You're going to be able to make the color customizable in the future. So this is good for accessibility options or just personal preference. Linear fusion rifles. So this is the one that everybody knew was going to happen. They've literally said that this was going to happen. So here we have, you've probably saw this coming. Linear fusion rifles outperform other heavy weapons for boss damage by a wide margin, and have had plenty of time in the sun. We're bringing them down enough for other options to compete. At the same time, exotic heavier linear fusions don't do enough to justify using one over a legendary, so they're not affected by this nerf. Reduce damage versus champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles by 15%. Yeah, that's about what I figured. Curious to see if that will kill them for DPS, or if it will elevate something like Sleeper, which is not being affected. Queenbreaker is also not being affected, not that you're using Queenbreaker for DPS meta, but Queenbreaker is getting a buff that is later down here. Not 100% sure that's going to really change much people's minds about it, but I guess we'll see. Machine guns. So this is interesting because they're actually buffing machine guns in PvP because nobody uses them there pretty much. They've been buffed a few times over the past year or so, but only in PvE. We've opted to increase their base damage a little, which makes them more forgiving to use in PvP. This buff also applies across the board in PvE. PvP damage is typically the base, and PvE has multipliers on top of that. We're also substantially increasing machine gun reserves, giving them higher uptime, particularly useful in hard content. I love machine guns. Machine guns are probably my favorite type of heavy weapon. I just, you sort of have to use linear fusions, so I don't use machine guns as much as I would like to, so I am very happy to see more buffs here. So this is a 10% damage increase buff, which increases or decreases time to kill on Guardians from 2/3 of a second to half. On high impact, rapid fire, 0.53 to 0.447. Adaptive is the same. But this 10%, this applies to PvE as well. That's what they just set up here, so that's good. And then also on top of that, reducing or increasing reserve ammo by 50% at no inventory, 20% at 100 inventory. So what this means is, this is not a stat we have access to, but things that are already like a ton of inventory, I forget which types of which, but at highest it'll only be 20%, but ones that have low reserves, which I think are the smaller magazine, slower firing ones, will have 50% more, or somewhere around that, which is good. I think reserves is one of the big problems that machine guns have had, considering how fast you chew through ammo there. Another heavy they are touching at long last. All right, heavy grenade launchers haven't been touched in a while and are substantially below other heavy options for damage. On top of that, grenade launcher projectiles have travel time, ballistic arc, small blast radius, and it can be consistently hard to land shots on a moving target, and they may hit fewer targets with the explosion than you'd expect. With this change, heavy grenade launchers should be significantly more useful in PvE and easier to use in both PvE and PvP. Increase damage versus champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles by 20%, miners by 40%. So you can use your chain reaction to clear some mobs, I guess. Improve projectile collision, making it slightly easier to land hits. Increase blast radius by 1 meter. I guess that's for everything. Parasite is not changing. Parasite does tons of damage already, which it definitely does, as people have learned this season running heists. I highly recommend Parasite for heists. It was recommended to me, and it's very good. I've seen some people debating about whether this will be enough to, because one thing not being changed here is rockets. And rockets, outside of linear fusions, in some encounters, rockets are top DPS meta right now. So maybe with all of these changes, rockets are going to end up on top. I kind of doubt heavy grenade launchers will be, but I guess we'll see. Shotguns, something about reticles. Okay. There's a change. It shouldn't make the reticle accurate in most ways at 85 degree FOV. Change this, make this accurate for all. FOV will come later. Shotgun reticles now change in size proportional to spread angle. Legend of Aqueous hipfire reticle is more representative of its large spread angle. Okay, sure. Kinetic weapons. Yeah, this one I found interesting. So kinetic weapons have always done 5% more damage versus unshielded targets in PvE. I swear to God, someone told me that like they had patched that out and like that wasn't true anymore. Maybe it was that energy weapons do more damage to I can't remember, but I swear someone said that wasn't true. Yes, it was. This meant kinetic slot stasis weapons were straight up better with extra functionality and no downside. Oh, I didn't know that applied to stasis weapons. I thought it was literally just kinetic damage type. We wanted to give players more of a reason to run kinetic damage type weapons, so instead of a blanket kinetic slot damage boost, we're switching to a kinetic damage type boost based on whether your kinetic weapon uses primary or special ammo and increase the bonus significantly. So kinetic primaries will have their multiplier increase from 105 to 11. So that's 10% damage increase. Kinetic special weapon damage increase from 105 to 115. So 5% over base, and then this is 15% over base, or 10%, 15%. So this is interesting. At first I said this was a buff to Arbalest, but that's being nerfed with the linear fusion nerf, I believe. So this is a buff to like, I'm curious to use this on like Wishender or Huckleberry or even like Bastion, because Bastion's gonna have just straight up 15% more damage now, which is interesting. I'm curious to see how that works. Kinetic slot stasis weapons do not have 5% damage bonus versus unshielded targets, so that's just a nerf there. I didn't even know they had that in the first place. And then they've already said this kinetic damage type will get a new perk coming in Lightfall. So there was a theory a long time ago that eventually they were just going to get rid of kinetic altogether because it doesn't fit in with all the elemental-based builds. But I guess, for flat 10 to 15% damage increase, that's what you're trading off. That's, I don't know, that could be good. I'm curious to see how that kind of shakes out. Exotics. So this is the list of exotics. They've already listed that the ones here are going to get subclass verb pairing, and a lot of these are very underused weapons, so the idea is to kind of buff them and make them work with subclass 3.0 at the same time. The Queenbreaker blinding effect was underwhelming for a heavy weapon, so we've changed how that's deployed. Note that Queenbreaker was also not affected by the global damage reduction of linear fusions, making it substantially stronger by comparison. Shot now changed to nearby enemies and uses Arc 3.0 blind. So anything you can trigger with Arc 3.0 blinds, Arc debuffs, whatever, will activate with Queenbreaker. Again, I don't know if that's going to make anyone use Queenbreaker. The eternal idea of just putting this as a special instead of a heavy remains. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll try it, but without some sort of additional damage buff. I don't know, man. I get that it's not being nerfed, but that doesn't seem like enough to me. Ruinous Effigy feels very voidy. Slamming the Transmutation Sphere is an obvious place to put an additional effect, so when you slam it, it now suppresses enemies. It's fun, I guess. Leviathan's Breath buff from a few seasons back inadvertently reduced PvP damage, so you can't one-hit players in their super with a headshot. We fixed that, but also added Volatile and increased the damage versus champion substantially. Now applies Volatile on Perfect Draw Impact. Increased damage from 396 to 442, so you can one-hit kill all supers in PvP. Increased damage versus champions by 30%. So this is on top of the, didn't it have like a 40% buff already? So they're like really, really wanting you to use this as like your unstoppable champion thing. And it will also apply Volatile at the same time. I don't know if, that's fine, I guess. This is the big one. We'll see if that's enough to make it worthwhile. I did try to run Leviathan's Breath a little bit in heists this season, and it just did not work. The problem is like it was okay against champions, and now it'll be even better against champions, but like once you get to DPS time, this is really not what you want to use against bosses, so that was my big problem with it. 1,000 Voices. So this one's fun. So essentially what this is saying is this will apply instant ignition if you hit a target with all your string of 1,000 Voices if you have Ember of Ashes, so the increased Scorch damage. So you will be able to instantly ignite enemies with a landed 1,000 Voices shot. So that's a bonus explosion on top of the damage you are already doing to 1,000 Voices. Very cool. And then I guess if you lay down a line of 1,000 Voices, anything that's like left over in the area will get burned. Sunshot is also getting... so Explosion on Kill now applies Scorch stacks. That was a clear place to add Scorch to, they say. Same with Polaris Lance. Perfect Fifth now applies Scorch stacks instead of a custom burn. That is a lot more scorch stacks than what Sunshot is doing. Two-tailed fox is now officially using like the subclass verbs. Solar Rocket now applies 60 plus 30 scorch stacks instead of burn. Void Rocket already suppresses, and the Catalyst completes the trifecta. Don't remember what the Catalyst does, but okay. Prometheus Lens is now getting incandescent. That is cool. That will apply. So that's just the perk that applies Scorch on kill to surrounding enemies. And there's the legendary one from Haunted can also have incandescent on it. But Prometheus Lens obviously has the giant solar circle of death that gets bigger as you do it. I'm still not just like a huge linear or trace rifle person, but I will be curious to see how that works. They're just making Grand Overture's blind be Arc 3.0 blind. That's it. They're not buffing its damage by anymore because they already buffed it a lot. Hipfire reticles. They're changing Hipfire reticles. Something. Added a reticle element to Manticore showing stacks of anti-grav. Okay, so they're going to do some interesting stuff with reticles in terms of charges. Perks. Osmosis works with Strand. Elemental Capacitor with Strand gives you 20 airborne effectiveness or 25 for Enhance. Not a huge shock given that Strand is the airborne class. Rewind rounds will now be dropping on other things besides Bolt of Glass weapons, so it's been rebuilt to work on non-Bolt of Glass weapons. I'm not sure what that means. I believe this is a buff to Eager Edge overall. People who know more about Eager Edge jumping than me, or lunging or whatever, skating, seem to think this is a buff, I think. So we will see how that goes for all you speedrunners. I was curious about this, if blinding grenades on grenade launchers would like start to count as arc damage, because there's something about like I forget what it was, but there was like something about blinding where there was some effect on kill on blind, and I wonder if that applied to blinding grenades, but they are going to make it not apply blinds, like official blind. They are changing it to disorienting grenades, not blinding grenades, because it is not Arc 3.0 blind. So they will do the same thing, but they will not trigger Arc keyword verb stuff. They will just be disorienting. So Lord knows blinding grenade launchers did not need additional buffs, so that makes sense. And they are nerfing Vice Stinger because it is the best origin trait in the game by a mile. You were getting full reloads when the perk activated, typically full reload. Now it reloads 25% of the magazine. So for stuff like linear fusions, that should still be, getting a shot back when that's active. That's good, but yeah, that probably needed a nerf. I'd love to see some buffs on some of the bad origin traits, but we'll see. We're already hard at work on seasons 21 and 22. Some of the changes making include a full auto melee. Have fun, Titans. Passover weapon type and exotic hipfire reticles, increasing how visibly they change even at high FOV. Really into reticles. Adding features like charge meters and exotic perk counters. That's fun. Balance changes in the works, but it's too early to get into them. We'll more information to share post Lightfall. Okay. So they are doing more balance changes, but not before Lightfall, I guess. I think that's what they're saying. So that's news for today. I am curious if any of these exotic buffs with the subclass things will make any of these weapons super elevated. I'm not 100% sure based on what I'm reading here that anything is going to feel super nuts. I don't know. Maybe constant ignitions on 1,000 voices would be good for DPS. I don't know. The other ones are a little hard to see, but I guess we'll find out. The kinetic stuff is interesting. I'm curious if this will be a meaningful, noticeable change on special weapons there. So I guess we will see how that works. And then there's the overall DPS meta changes where we will see what comes out on top, which seems like it's probably going to be rocket launchers, but I'm certainly curious to try out the heavy grenade launchers. We know at least one heavy grenade launcher is coming with Lightfall. It is one of the Neomuno weapons. I think, I don't know if it's that one or a different one, but there's supposed to be a heavy waveframe grenade launcher coming, so that would be cool, and we'll see how that works. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I guess we'll do the TWAB tomorrow, but it's probably going to have much less info than this, and I guess we'll see. All right, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.